June 16th. The first motion is the warrant. Motion by Brian.
Second. Move.
Seconded by Bill. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Next, the minutes of June 2nd.
Move.
Brian. Motion by Brian, second by Bill. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Invitation to speak? Okay, our first scheduled meeting is with the Marcus Law Offices. Application for pledge of license and pledge of inventory, Applebee's Neighborhood Grill and Bar, 91 West Medway Road. This is something that was done a few times in the past. An application of Apple New England LLC for change of beneficial interest, pledge of license, and pledge of inventory, alcoholic beverage restaurant license issued to the premises known as Applebee's Neighborhood Grill and Bar. They also, there are 27 towns. This is it's for a blanket approval and applications. And basically it goes on, the review was to determine whether, this is by the ABCC, the review was to determine whether the contemplated transaction is consistent with the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 138. Based on our review, we are satisfied that the transaction is consistent with the purposes of the law and would not result in individual corporate licenses being deemed to be out of compliance with the applicable statute. And then there's no change of managers, so there's no paperwork on that. And like I said, we've probably done this 2 or 3 times in the past, and this is consistent when they're trying to deal with 27 establishments in 27 towns. Brian?
Yeah, I'd be glad to make a motion to approve. As you said, we've seen this before. It deals with all of the Applebee's and is apparently a result of change of the corporate ownership, how they refer to it, the upper tier ownership entity.
Bill?
Yeah, within our memo, it indicates that the ABCC has reviewed the application, looked at the board of directors, looked at the certificate from a DOR perspective. They're in good standing, so I see no issues either. I'd be happy to second.
Okay. Any more discussion? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Okay, next is our town treasurer, Irene Larrabee. Irene's been here for about 6 weeks, been working very hard with the office. She has a very competent office, and they've been working very well together, and she's here tonight to talk about bonds and then town bank accounts. So with that, Irene, welcome
Great,
to your
thank
first
you.
meeting on TV.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay.
The first topic pertains to the borrowing that just recently occurred. We went out to sale last Friday. We had 4 bidders for both of the different sets of bonds. The first bonding was for $12.2 million. That's $6 million for the Woodland School project to start that project off, and then $6.2 million for the Geriatric Authority. For that particular bond, we were able to achieve a 0.75 interest rate, and that is for 1 year. Short-term note, so next year I'll be back and we'll reevaluate if we need to take it out short-term again for another year or if it's ready to go long-term. The second item pertains to the Winter Road Relief Grant that was provided by the state. They've extended spending that it doesn't have to be done now by June 30th into next fiscal year, which is September 30th. Because we're crossing fiscal years and the grant money will be in between the town and the state as far as the reimbursement, the town accountant and I decided that we needed to go forward with a grant anticipation note for 6 months. So that'll come due in December. At that time, we anticipate we'll have all our reimbursements in from the state, and the note would be paid off. That note had 3 bidders, and then the interest rate for that is 0.65. And I can answer any questions you like.
Brian, any questions?
No, everything seems to be laid out pretty well.
Bill?
Thank you.
No, I think what's helpful is some of the graphs that talk about and indicate what the cash flow is and the purpose of the bonding. It makes sense to me, and I appreciate the detail that you provided within your rationale and documentation to show it.
And I also like that attachment you provided to us on the financial position of the town in regards to debt and all that stuff. So I think that's
From Moody's?
Yeah.
Yes, the rating call went very well with Moody's. We're a strong AA2. A few of the factors that just concerned him was that our property values haven't rebounded yet while other communities have started to. So we'll watch that again through the next year with the assessor's office. That's something that, as it improves, it could also improve our bond rating. The other item that he also indicated is to continue to strengthen our reserves. We're one of the few communities that have a very strong reserve established, and he said that's something that helps us maintain our AA2 and could take us to a AA1.
Great.
Okay. Okay, then the next item, Irene, will be the
I
bank
think we
accounts,
need,
right?
excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry.
I think Irene
Need some motions?
indicates that there's
Yes.
three
Okay, go ahead,
specific
Rick. You have the
motions.
motions.
If I can read them, and you
Please.
gentlemen, would be easier. Voted that we, Board of Selectmen, hereby determine, in accordance with General Law, Chapter 70B, that the amount of the cost of the Woodland Elementary School project authorized by a vote of the town passed on October 24th, 2011, Article 27, not being paid by the school facilities grant, is $32,817,453, and we hereby approve of the issuance of notes and bonds in such amount under said Chapter, General Law, Chapter 70B. That would be the first one.
So moved.
Motion by Brian,
Second.
second by Bill. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous.
Second motion would be to approve the sale of $12,200,000 at 0.75% general obligation bond anticipation notes of the town dated June 20, 2014, payable May 15, 2015, to Eastern Bank at par plus a premium of $68,396.25.
So
Moved.
Motion by
So moved.
Brian, second by Bill. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous.
Further voted to approve the sale of $122,593, 0.65% general obligation state aid anticipation note, the state aid note, and together with the notes of the town dated June 30, 2014, and payable December 19, 2014, to Eastern Bank at par.
Motion?
So moved.
Motion?
Second.
Seconded by Bill. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. That's it, Rick, on the motion?
That's it.
Okay. And the next thing is on the town bank accounts. You had that for us?
Yes.
So we'll jump to G2.
Sure.
Yes. So
As
she-
far as with the
she-
town bank accounts, one of the things I've been reviewing over the past month is the number of accounts that we have, which bank accounts are required by law, by statute. Is there a benefit of consolidating some of our bank accounts? And I also reviewed our investment portfolio, both with Milford National Bank as well as with Bartholomew/Commonwealth, that does a majority of our investments for the town. Upon review, one of the things that I noticed was with Milford National Bank, we had $3.1 million in investments through them that was in a low-risk account, and we were being assessed a transaction fee of anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500 per month. A majority of the funds that were in that account were scholarship funds, and about 700,000 of them were non-expendable. The expendable portion is what is typically awarded, the interest that's earned on an annual basis through the schools. So when we were looking at that account, we assessed the charges for any transactions across all the accounts that are within that pool, as well as any interest earned. And what we've been seeing when I look through past years is a decline in the monies that we've been receiving or return on our investment. When I compared it to our other low-risk investments that we have with Bartholomew and Commonwealth, we're already at the limit that they have for assessing fees, and we're currently at 20 basis points for anything under 20 million that we invest with them, because the 20 million is the threshold. Anything thereafter, we're charged 0. With Milford National, we were at 40 basis points, and it was something I discussed with the investment officer with Scott, and they couldn't go below the 40 basis points to help reduce that transaction fee on our scholarship funds. So therefore, in discussions with Rick as well as with Sackatown Accountant, I let them know that I'd be moving the funds from Milford National into Bartholomew and Commonwealth/Commonwealth. Because we do receive a higher rate of return on investment, it's both low risk, so it's an apples-to-apples comparison. And by moving the funds with Bartholomew, we no longer incur the $1,000 to $1,500 transaction fees per month. So we're saving in those scholarship funds, over 12 million, or not 12 million, last topic, $12,000 a year just in transaction fees that hopefully we can put towards additional scholarships.
Any questions?
What scholarships are we talking about? I'm not familiar with these kind of accounts.
Sure. There's approximately 10 to 11 scholarships that were donated to the town. Some of them had an amount that was not to be expended, and it can only be expended with interest. A good example is a C, and I'll probably say it wrong because I've been saying it wrong, unfortunately, C Hoppy or Hopi
Oh, okay.
scholarship.
Yeah, yeah.
In that they donated $45,000 to the town, non-expendable. Each year, they can expend the interest and award scholarships based upon the interest earned on those dollars. That's one
Okay.
example.
Okay. How many of those, how many scholarship funds are there?
I believe we have about 21, but I can double check the
Okay.
count.
Okay.
Because you'll see that comes up later in that we also have scholarship accounts with Milford Federal. We have about 4 passbooks there. We have a passbook with Santander. We have one with Bank of America. So they're scattered at this point. So what I'm doing is consolidating them into one place to make all transactions easier, not only from an investment standpoint, but when we're trying to disperse the checks, we can do it very easily through our warrant process instead of running around town to all these different banks.
So that's part of the 3.1 million, the 20 or so scholarships that you just mentioned?
There is approximately 15 scholarships that are part of the 3.1.
Okay.
The other 5 that are scattered at different bank accounts comprise of about $52,000.
Okay, okay. And that's, so the 15, that would be the principal of the scholarship, I guess, the gift to the town, and then that's the scholarship that gets administered through the school department?
Correct, on an annual basis,
Okay.
typically in May.
All right, okay. I didn't realize that those were, well, I mean, there were a number of scholarships that are presented at the awards night. I always assumed that they were all, privately funded. I didn't know that at least a portion of them were held by the town.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Basically, anybody has that option, is they can provide a gift to the town to be fully expended, or say non-expended, and you can spend the interest. So it's actually been growing. We had a gentleman write a check for $5,000 for the non-expendable portion in May, so he could continue awarding
Yeah.
because the interest was beginning to be so low.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And so then you also have, you listed here, general revenues and then municipal property. What would that consist of, municipal property?
It's basically just monies that are set aside for any liabilities or claims that are made against the town on municipal property.
Oh,
So we have, right now, that's sitting in 2 different places. It was sitting in Milford National Bank, a small amount there, and then we also had it invested with Bartholomew. So we had the fundings in 2 sources, and then you had to compare it back to your ledgers on a monthly basis. So it didn't make sense to have it in 2 places, same as the general account. Better to have it commingled and then get your highest rate of return.
okay. And it's easily accessible at the Bartholomew Commonwealth?
Yes.
We need to, utilize those funds for damage to property or something?
Yes, we also have our stabilization funds with them. It's just a matter of going through the warrant process or an emergency procurement, and I can withdraw the funds that day. We'd have it back in one of our other accounts to draw a check.
Okay, all right.
Bill?
Very good.
Yeah, just for my benefit, could you also review how much is with Bartholomew now that the town has there?
Yes, I actually made a note of that this morning. As of this morning, we have $30,669,196.
All right, so it's not a matter of switching accounts, it's a matter of cleaning up accounts.
Exactly.
I'm guessing that through this activity, you're also gaining efficiencies within your office, not to have to run around
Correct.
so much to so many places. Well, from my perspective, I appreciate your new perspective on this and the thought process of cleaning some of this out. It may just simply be, the same set of eyes that have looked at it for a very long time, so we appreciate that perspective and your experience there. I don't have any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. No, thank you on that, Irene. I know you've been working very hard and doing a nice job. And then we'll have you and Zach come back at another meeting to talk about the management letter and some of the
Okay,
recommendations.
perfect.
Anything else for us?
Nothing else?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you didn't need a vote on this. That's within your purview
No,
to do.
there's-
And
exactly, there's no vote on this.
all right, but I appreciate that you taking out the time, because I know we're talking about moving funds from local banks, and you had talked about giving them the opportunity to also match up, and so, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sir, you're not here from Applebee's, right? Yes, I am. Oh, you know what? We denied everything. No. We closed you down, no. We voted, and the board, you're all set.
All set?
You're all
Okay,
set,
yeah.
yes.
All right, thanks a lot.
Everything you needed was done. We made the 3 motions as required.
Okay,
So you can check with the administrator in the morning if you have any questions.
okay, thanks.
All right, thank you.
We just spotted him.
Yeah. Okay, next is, this is something that on 75 Purchase Street Market, please just want to read this, and then we can have some other action discussion. Please take notice that the Board of Selectmen will hold a hearing at 7:15 in Room 3, Milford Town Hall, 52 Main Street, Milford, on June 16, 2014, at which hearing the Board of Selectmen will consider the decision of the Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission dated May 30th, 2014, which decision has remanded the matter to the board with a recommendation for a 5-day suspension. This is something where the board, on a 2-to-1 vote, rendered a decision of a suspension of 30 days. Went to the ABCC, took a long time, came back, and they recommended 5 days, and they sent it back to this board. So with that, the attorney for the package store has written to town council, and Rick would tell us what he's asking for, Rick?
Yes, basically, the attorney for Peters Market, what I would recommend, if the board's inclined to accept the ABCC decision, then the board should simply proceed accordingly with a vote, and that would end the matter. If any member of the board is not inclined to do that and would be looking to reject the ABCC decision, then the attorney for Peters Market would ask that we continue the hearing to our next meeting.
Okay. Brian, what's your,
I, have no problem supporting the ABCC recommendation, or I should even, it's beyond that, it's a decision. I mean, it was well written, well thought out, apparently well argued on both sides. And, I think in part it's the nature of the beast in terms of these compliance checks as opposed to other types of violations that I think heavily weighted in the ABCC's decision to reduce it to the 5 days. So I don't see any point in going any further. They're,
yeah.
we're gonna march off to court.
Right.
And I just don't think it's a wise investment of
I mean-
time or resources.
If we had a good town council, we could do that, but certainly we don't.
Well, you can
No.
only
So if that's a motion, I'd be happy to second it for the same reason.
Motion by
do what you
Brian,
can do.
second by Bill, that we suspend the license for 5 days, and we came up with some dates, Rick, that would be
Yeah, if the board
next
were
Tuesday.
Inclined Tuesday, June 24th, 2014, through Saturday, June 28th, 2014. That would begin the suspension next week.
And we'll send them the appropriate notification and all
Yes,
that?
yes.
Jerry, anything else on that?
Oh, that's it, that should take care of it.
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion on the 5 days next week.
Yeah, I'll move to authorize the 5 days as stated.
Starting on, okay, second,
Second.
Bill? Any discussion? If not, all in favor? Unanimous. Okay. That concludes the public hearings and scheduled appointments. At this time, we'll go to the town administrator's report. Rick?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Another report on the town windows. Basically, all the windows on the second floor have been restored and reinstalled. 12 windows on the first floor have been also reinstalled. If you were upstairs today, you'll see they're now completing the treasurer's office, town council's office, town accountant's office. So we expect to have all the windows restored and installed by June 30th. The repainting of the windows on the basement level may extend into July, but we're hoping early in July that this project will be completed. I've been notified by Fire Chief William J. Toohey Jr. that he has promoted Lieutenant Mark A. Nelson to the position of Deputy Fire Chief. He received the highest score among the individuals taking the recent civil service exam. Mark will serve in a provisional capacity pending certification of an eligible list from civil service. I've been also notified by our town treasurer, Irene Larrabee, that the town has completed its conversion from Harvard Pilgrim to Blue Cross Blue Shield, with all active members on May 1st and all retirees on June 1st. She commended Assistant Treasurer Kelly Capice and Janet Ferreira for their excellent work in completing this process. Louisa Lake Weed Control Treatment. The initial control treatment was scheduled for tomorrow, pending DEP permit receipt. I just received notice this late afternoon that Mass DEP did not yet issue the permit. Mike Brashani and our expert will follow up with them to check on the status of their review. I am informed that once the initial treatment is completed, 2 additional treatments will be required, and I'm informed that this delay will not in any way hinder the project, and this will effectively curtail the weeds at the lake. I've also been informed that the Mass Department of Agricultural Resources will be doing a presentation on the damaging effects of the Asian longhorned beetle at Town Hall on June 27th. This 1-hour session will educate town employees on the signs of early detection so as to be able to prevent the devastation of trees and forests. Pursuant to a request from our last meeting, I met with Bob Russell of National Grid to review the progress reports the town has been receiving tracking the progress of the removal of double poles in the town. We've come up with where we'll be adjusting the report so we can provide a more detailed report and information to the board as the reason for the certain poles being added to the system. So hopefully we can get a more true and accurate reading on exactly the progress of the removal of these poles. Route 16 Improvement Project, again, as directed by the board at last meeting, I requested Town Engineer Vonnie Reese to contact Mark Johnson at the Department of Transportation to request a smaller 495 sign at the intersection of Route 16 and 85. She also has made a request for DOT to inspect the ADA detector panels and the pedestrian crossing chirp on East Main Street. I will report to the board once we hear from Mr. Johnson on the results. The Louisa Lake Dam, GZA, has been authorized to proceed with the Phase 1 inspection. The report will be filed prior to June 30, 2014. As soon as I receive that report, obviously, we will present it to the board so that we can see what next steps will be required. As per the request of the chairman, I spoke with Vincent Coutone, the owner of 104 East Main Street, the old Gibbs gas station, regarding the condition of the property. He indicated to me that he will clean up the property within the next couple of weeks. He did also say that he's trying to market the property there. A couple of things that I wanted to add on. We have received, we're involved in an ongoing issue with a resident regarding a zoning bylaw violation at 11 Sunset Drive. We received a complaint that he or she was parking a commercial vehicle at that address. Section 2.3 of the zoning bylaws prohibits the parking of a commercial vehicle in excess of 1.5 tons in that district. The town received a complaint, and the building commissioner investigated the complaint. Over the past year, citations have been written, and the owner would periodically comply. However, due to the owner continuing to park this vehicle, an application for a criminal complaint was filed in the Milford District Court. And after hearing, the clerk magistrate issued the complaint, and we are currently awaiting a trial date. Last item, again, add on as of today. As one of his outline goals in April, the chairman and other board members requested we look further into the requirement of a new audio system for Upper Town Hall. Town Engineer Vonnie Reese, Mike Nicholson, and myself met with a representative from Ad Tech Systems who reviewed the current system. With his assistance, we'll be seeking to determine what type system and features will best suit the needs of the Upper Town Hall. I am setting up a meeting in July to receive a demonstration of the system at the Upper Town Hall. After this meeting, I hope to be able to provide the board with a system proposal and a cost projection to proceed further. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rick. Rick, on the Louisa Lake de-weeding the vegetation?
Yes.
When you have a chance, can we obtain what the contract was that we signed with
Sure.
them?
Yep.
The status, how many times have they done it? And if someone could give us some type of an evaluation on the type of work, I mean, has it been beneficial? Have they, are the weeds actually decreasing and all that? And what how far the contract goes into the future, okay?
Okay, sure.
Brian, any comments for,
Yeah, I'd
questions
just
for?
like to refer a little bit to the add-on item that Rick had about the residents at 11 Sunset Drive, because I was the one that was receiving these letters from an anonymous citizen. I don't know that they went to everyone else, but apparently this individual believes that the folks that live at 11 Sunset Drive, it's the Fernandez family. There's a number of individuals listed, actually six people. This person apparently feels that this resident and their family has connections with the police department, and if anyone complains about the situation, they will get harassed by the police. So what I'd like to do, and I really neglected to mention this to Rick earlier, but I'd like to do it now. If you could pass this on to the police chief also, because I'd like to get a response from the police department as to, what type of enforcement action has been done, how often have they looked into this situation, and if the chief could also address some of the allegations that are made in this response.
Good. Is that okay, Bill?
Yeah, along the same topic, I'm sorry, is Brian done?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Along the same line of discussion, it was, personally, I was receiving calls about an issue probably some 5 years ago now, and I went directly to the chief. I know how, after listening to the people in the neighborhood, how disruptive it can be for a tractor-trailer vehicle or the rig specifically to be started idling. And there's reasons why vehicles of that size are zoned out of the residential areas or are not in compliance with our bylaws. Personally, my experience was that when I worked with the chief, he dealt with it swiftly, and it eventually, after repeated instances, it eventually came to a situation where the vehicle was towed. Eventually the person decided, that was not complying, eventually decided to comply because it started to get very costly. So it makes sense what's being pursued now. The circumstances for the issue that I was involved in could be different, and this may be the way to go. But I've not had any issues or concerns with the chief when I've raised them with regard to commercial vehicles, large commercial vehicles in a residential neighborhood. The only concern I have, Brian, I'll say it, is I just want to use care and caution in responding to anonymous letters, because while the speculation about somebody being connected to the police department and everything, I don't know warrants a response, but certainly your question as it related to the types of activities, what they had done as it related to it, how many calls they had received, how many times they had gone up there, all of that seems within reason. I hope we're not requesting the chief to dig into the anonymous allegations of somebody being connected or something, because in small towns we could spend all of our resources doing that. I don't know, I'm trying to get a feel for what you were looking for.
To be honest with you, and I'm thinking back, in all the years that I've been on the board, I think that this is probably the first anonymous letter that I've really addressed. Because of what you say, generally, if someone is not really willing to come forward and identify themselves, then I don't really consider the claims to have much merit. This person, however, really, refers to himself as an annoyed citizen, but I think gives a fairly, cogent, reason why he or she wants to remain anonymous, and has also sent me two letters to that regard.
Okay, I've not seen those, so.
Yeah, I know, and I thought that they were coming to the whole board until I talked to Rick about the second one. Because lots of times we get stuff, and I just assumed they were going all three of us. But they weren't. So when it first came in, I had asked Rick to look into it, and he started the process with John Erickson. So, I'm assuming that this individual watches our meeting and focuses in on some things. I've driven by 11 Sunset Drive after receiving this a couple of times. I saw the big, huge vehicle there. So, you know, I think it merits enough to at least to be brought to the chief's attention so that he can address some of these concerns. But I know what you're saying, and
Yeah.
you know, generally as a thought, I don't deal with
Sure,
anonymous
yeah.
letters,
And
period.
the way I look at it, Brian, is, you know, you've had benefit of reading it. You know, in this regard, I certainly trust your judgment, so anything that you'd like to see, is you're an independently elected selectman, and if you want to see it and ask for it, I think it's fine.
And the chief will use good judgment and get back to us.
Yeah,
on what
Yeah,
has to be
okay,
done.
that's fine.
Yeah.
No issues.
Okay. Anything else, Bill, on Rick's,
No, it's clear,
Okay.
thank you.
Rick, anything happening with the 12, with Temple Street, the demolition of the building?
Yes, John is going to solicit quotes, and we're going to undertake that process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, now we'll go to old business and the proposed committee, Middle School East. The superintendent would like to address the board. Bob?
Oh, sure.
Sure. How are you?
Good, how are you tonight?
Good.
Evening, everybody.
I saw the meeting couple of weeks ago when they were discussing this at the school committee,
Yes.
and I thought that Chairman Harrison was very clear in that he felt that the best thing would be to go forward, joint partnership, and proceed in the areas that have to be delved into, and
Sure.
'cause I think it's, important, and even though it's 2 years away, that'll come by fast, and, but we'll certainly want to have your input before we do that.
Well, yeah, no, thanks for the opportunity to speak. I want to make sure that we're on the same page for the Board of Selectmen, the school committee. I did, as you mentioned, bring it up to the committee at the last school committee meeting. Just a reminder to everybody that as part of our long-range educational plan, we did part of the promise that was made at town meeting was that we wanted a Woodland School project. We were to take Middle School East offline as a school within the transitional program between pre-K through 12. We also don't want to wait. You know, this is assuming everything is on time, project-wise, assuming that the new school will be opened in 2 years' time. The idea of having a committee, and I expressed an interest in being on that to you, it was just making sure we don't lose time in the next 2 years as to what to do with that.
Right.
But I want to make sure it's clear also that the building is not yet surplus. It's sort of on a promise that at some time it will be, but I want to make sure we are all clear that in 2 years' time, a committee sitting in front of me a school committee may have a different view on that and the need, if any, for the school department. But I think the idea of having a committee that looks at this from every angle, and I just wanted to let the selectmen know, too, that the conversations that have started in some years back, and when Larry Duncan and I, for example, were part of QCC's board, we had discussions there with looking to expand Quincy Community College as a possibility, and there's a list of other ideas that have talked about for that building to keep it used in some way for school use as a good neighbor in the community. But I wanted to just make sure I was clear in going back to the school committee on Thursday evening as to what information I can provide to them. It was requested at the meeting to find out who would be on this committee, who was made up, who was going to be on the committee and so forth. I don't know if there's any information I can bring back to the group.
Sure.
If you have that to share. I just want to make sure that
Sure.
everyone understood the long-range educational plan and where we are today.
We'll get to the board members, but this is something that, I mean, the worst nightmare that I could see is that, I remember 10 years ago when we had the chairman of the building committee, we had 2 articles for that building to renovate it, and you needed 2/3 vote. One of them was a majority, it wasn't 2/3, the other one wasn't. So even at that time, we're saying, what happens to that building down the road? So the only thing that I see is that, you know, I think I've put together a pretty good committee here, and if the members approve it, you know, we have to do what's best for the town, whether it be school use, town use, mixed use, office complex, whatever the case may be, bringing in colleges and all that stuff. But I think that in order to have a good partnership between the school and the town, if we start this, doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be one thing or the other. I think the committee will come up with alternatives, options, and I think what'll be done at the final analysis will be what's best for the community. And like I said, the worst thing is for that building to be boarded up, closed, and nothing happening in that location. Because I remember when Stacy's was closed, for Proposition 2.5, it stayed like that for a long time, and then people were incensed. It was right across from the library, it didn't look good, you know, and this is right on the main thoroughfare of Main Street. So
Absolutely.
I definitely think it would be, has to, you know, all work together, look at the information. You know, there's a lot of things that have to be looked at, costs, zoning, parking, all those elements, all those topics. And I think a good committee can, research those things and come up with recommendations for this board, working with the school committee, saying what's in the best interest. And so I think, the sooner we start it, it doesn't have to be done, the alternatives and all that do not have to be done within 6 months, but they can start, they can get in the information. All the town department heads will be available for consultation. At some point, and I think Selectman Murray mentioned it a few meetings back, at some point, we may need some monies, this body may need some monies for an architect or an engineer. So we have to start, do it right, and I think that whenever we do something in town, it's always done in the best interest, and we've done fairly, taking into account, it was a school building, what's gonna happen, can it be something else?
Right.
What's the best situation for the community as far as, we spend a lot of money, and we can, the financial department heads and FinCom plan everything accordingly with our consent and advice as well. But, we have to, watch the dollars and, could the town afford, $5 million, $8 million as far as renovating that down the road? We don't know. So that's why, let's get all the information, and then we'll ascertain to see what happens.
Sure, I want to underscore the importance of this being a cooperative
Sure.
relationship with the school department. And again, I understand it's sort of a domain question as to, right now, it still falls within the school department, it still belongs to the school department, it's not at this time excess. But
No.
again, before it's declared surplus, we have to have a new school that's
course.
open for kids to go to. And the other piece, as we look at for long-term considerations,
Sure.
and this certainly can be vetted by that committee, but we have a wonderful gymnasium there that would be
Sure.
a great loss to the community to have that. But at the same time, we realize that
There are other factors,
there are
too.
other factors also, and
Yeah.
we don't want to necessarily take on another school obligation of saying, in one breath, we want to take a school offline, and then the next breath saying, wait a minute, we want to keep the school
Sure.
for us. So I understand that, and the tension there that can come from is not having the committee that will ultimately decide that be this committee. It's really we're hoping 2 years' time before the school is open. Right now, everything appears to be on schedule, not having broke ground yet.
Yeah, and like I said, Bob, when I watched the meeting, Chairman Harrison made it very clear that he wanted to be the school committee wanted to be part of this committee and working together and finding out the best options and all that, and that's gonna take, it's gonna take a while. So, as you mentioned, I told you on the phone that my recommendation would be the town administrator, former town administrator Lou Solazzi, yourself, I'd like to have Bill Buckley represent the Selectmen, Community Use Director Lenny Marcone, a school committee member designee, the chairman or his designee, planning board member, chairman or his designee, finance committee representative, a member from the Industrial Development Commission, and I've also asked Edward Bertarelli and William Sambord to serve on this committee. They were very instrumental in the past school committee, building committees, and
Sure.
have a lot of knowledge. Matter of fact, we worked on that building, so, I think this could go a long way in working together. This is not a power thing. It's do what's right, and I think, the sooner we start the planning and looking at all the alternatives, cost factors and all that, we'll probably need some monies down the road. Maybe in October, the committee may come forward and say, hey, we need a certain amount of money to do these types of studies and engineering, whatever the case may be. So I think the sooner we start, it's, I think, in the best interest of everyone. Brian?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, a couple of things. Personally, I think the majority of the school committee misses a golden opportunity to control its own destiny. Right now, this building is under the jurisdiction of the school department. Essentially, you're asking a committee today to make a decision for a committee that would be in place 2, maybe 3 years from now, which, is virtually impossible. My focus was that, the school committee ought to evaluate this fully, not necessarily for school use, but, there are other needs that could happen. I'm sure there are creative things that could happen. You could probably bring in tuition programs. Certainly, the school department could arrange a rental with a college or with a vocational institution, and the school department could retain the rental funds as opposed to going to the community and still utilize your gymnasium. So, there's so many opportunities for the school department itself to really evaluate the focus of this building. I understand that the long-range educational plan has said that it would be surplus, but, to me, that meant it's surplus as a middle school, okay? So it's still an asset within the school department, and I think your school committee really is missing a golden opportunity, because even if we go with this committee as constituted, and I'd like to propose a change to it, but even if we go with this committee as constituted, you've got 11 people, you've got 2 school representatives out of 11, 3 if you count community use. So, the odds are weighted against the school department in this particular thing, as opposed to the committee themselves going forward, establishing their own task force, and exploring the various opportunities that could exist. Having said that, apparently the school committee discussed it and considered this and elects not to proceed on their own, and I guess they want to be part of this committee membership here. As I look at the mission statement, as I think about, how, I would approach, this kind of a problem in this gray area where we're at right now, where the building still is being used, it's still under the jurisdiction of the school department, we don't really know what the future's gonna hold. There's a lot of moving parts here. To me, the first step is to evaluate the asset. See exactly what the needs are of that building. I'm talking about an assessment of the building envelope, roof, windows, HVAC. I don't know the last time the school department did that. It may have been when Ken Dinesco was on board and working that. But, whatever most recent school records are there in terms of building assessment, as a committee, I would look to build on to that. And I think, Mr. Chairman, that's exactly what it's going to require. It's going to require a town meeting appropriation. I would, venture to guess you're talking probably about 40 to 50,000 for an architectural firm to come forward and do that kind of an assessment. Because if we don't do that, we don't really know what we have. Well, we know it's a school. You might be able to do this, you might be able to do that, but, what's the HVAC like? What's the condition of the roof? What's the exterior, the foundation? So, to me, the direction to this committee ought to be, number one, evaluate the asset. And then, depending upon the asset, now you've got this committee. So, is the focus going to be, do we exhaust potential school uses first? Well, the school department's kind of surrendered that, so I think school needs are maybe secondary to the overall town needs. You just don't know where this committee is going to go from that point forward. And that's my point, that now the school committee is really losing control of an asset that they have, that there might be some opportunities for programs that could benefit the school department and the town. But, having said that, I think what has to happen is a prioritization of uses with evaluations of the consequences and the needs. So, okay, one of the uses might be elder housing. Okay, how does that happen? And I would expect this committee to evaluate that, the needs and the consequences of that. So that's, what I would toss in as a focus to this particular committee. But as I look at the construction of the committee, traditionally, when we've done committees, and because town meeting is such an important part of the process of any capital project, there has been town meeting representation. So I would propose to add 2 town meeting members to be appointed by this board as additional members of the committee. And also, if we're looking for designees, I would also nominate Mike Walsh to serve as the school committee designee. And other than that, you're off and running.
Bill?
Oh, boy, there's a lot there. So let me just backtrack, having been on the Long Range Educational Planning Committee with Bob.
What was that, 10 years ago?
It was about 10 years ago. But, one of the things that was reinforced at multiple school committees across the way during that time was that that long-range ed plan was reinforced. It was reviewed multiple times and reinforced. We had multiple letters of intent that were signed by members of this board as well as your members of the committee and voted upon, all of which stating that it was surplus. Now, beyond that, there was a commitment made by the building committee, and when the architectural money was first looked for, the $1 million, it was reinforced at multiple town meetings that the building would be surplus. So to me, I'm not surprised that the committee reacted the way it did, because, you know, when they went out and got $60 million, they committed to certain things happening, and it's fairly well documented, and it's available for all to review. That wasn't challenged, and that was, in fact, part of the reason why I think a component of it that was what gave the town confidence that we were moving forward in the right way. Not just the fact that it was surplus, but the continued fact that it was reinforced that this board would make sure that it wasn't just a pigeon coop like the old high school, and that that we'd be caretakers of that, and it's that process that Dino's trying to implement now. With regard to one of Brian's comments, I frankly do not want to designate from any of these boards any particular member. I think that's up to the boards. I don't want to designate from the IDC. I don't want to tell the FinCom who to appoint, and I don't want to tell the school committee who to appoint. I think the chairman left it open enough so that those committees can look at their respective assignments in subcommittees and whatnot, because I'm not trying to influence this one way or another, but let the committees decide who's going to be appointed. I don't know who has the time, who has the ability, who's on other committees, and who's on subcommittees. And I don't want to pretend to do that with the FinCom, the planning board, or anybody. So I would recommend against that and just say that we leave that open, as the chairman has left it. The only thing I do want to say, and I think there's room, I think we do have some members of town meeting. For example, Ed Bertorelli is a town meeting member. There are members within and from these boards that are members of town meeting. But I did receive a call, and it was a challenge by this board when we looked at the Citizens for Milford to get more involved. I did receive a call from Steve Treadle, who asked to be on it. And so I would recommend to add his name, because, again, it was this board who challenged Citizens of Milford to then decide on how we shape this community and move forward. I know a key aspect of this, whatever happens to Middle School East, is going to impact Main Street. I think that it's important that that committee consider that. I think Brian's suggestion that we evaluate and document current state of the building is absolutely dead on. I don't think anybody should start a process this in-depth without understanding what the current asset's condition is. So I think that's a great suggestion, and that's one as representing the board that I plan to take back. It's frankly the first place I would have wanted to start, and I appreciate him reinforcing that. But no, I don't want to pick for other committees who we should put on it, and I'd like to add Steve Treadle as a member of the Citizens of Milford, because, again, it was this board that challenged that group to get more involved. And this is one way. It's my understanding he called all the members of the board. I'm not sure how that discussion went, but he called me, and I said I would put his name forward. But I think the mission statement is right. I think we ought to be taking back to that committee the opportunity as broad as we can. I think ultimately this is a smart group of people who are well-versed in a lot of different aspects of municipal government. I think having more citizen participation is inherently a good thing, and, you know, private sector experience. But at the end of the day, these are things within this mission statement that make sense. I appreciate the fact that when your committee had that discussion, they didn't backtrack after just receiving $60 million, and $30 million of that in town funds, and run from their decision to make it surplus, but instead reinforce that. It wasn't that long ago. If we were talking about a decision that was 10 years ago, then it might have, but it was just a very recent, town meeting, the last town meeting, where town meeting members voted on it. I don't want to keep going. I've made my suggestion, and I'll let the chair decide where to go next.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I do have to, I will bring this back to the school committee. I have an update on the agenda for Thursday evening to
Sure.
let them know what the discussion was here. The chairman had asked, proposed membership of the organization and so forth, so I know you'll decide that tonight. And selfishly, I'd like to see there be a future of educational use. I think there's an opportunity there, for either higher learning, higher education learning, or the like. But however it's chosen to
Yeah.
go forward, I'm glad I'm able to
Sure.
be part of that as well and be a voice on that
Well,
group.
Bob, I just hate talking about this. I mean, we were talking about this for many, many months now, so I just want to get it going, get it started. About 5 people called me, and I said, well, I have chosen the 11 members. I think 11 members is a good number, but, of course, I have to make recommendations to the board members, and if they want to augment that number, that's okay, no problem. So what I would like to do tonight is, Bill's talked about Steve Treadle, and Brian's talked about Mike Walsh. Let's add them to this committee, and then the school committee can still choose one more person. Okay?
Okay.
All right? Is that a good compromise?
Yeah, if you want. I mean, my, request about the town meeting membership, I thought would broaden the perspective a bit, because, when you have a community committee like this, typically there's an invite to other, I know Steve Treadle called, but, I don't know who else is out there that might be interested on this. So typically there's an open invite. I thought that the 2 town meeting members could allow us to at least satisfy that, somewhat in part. The problem when you have the, the hand-picked committee, then when you go forward, to the town meeting or to other groups, the credibility is difficult, because, there might be a certain segment of the population that feels
Yeah.
that they weren't included. So I thought at least, opening to 2 town meeting members. I mean, I understand Mr. Treadle is a town meeting member. He could certainly qualify under that aspect, but
Is Mike a town meeting member?
I'm not sure whether he is or he isn't.
I don't believe so.
Well,
But
I would like to, get moving on this. You want to increase it by a couple, Steve and Mike, good people, and I think this committee will do the right thing, and you have some great expertise here. And I think the results, will speak for themselves. And I just think to make it a lot larger than 13 and all that, the delay time, it just makes it more confusing. There's all kinds of rumors going around on what's going to happen to the building, and to sell it, to knock it down, stuff like that. Let's get a committee, and these are good people. They'll work hard, and let them start with the mission statement, working in different areas. And I think within probably 2 or 3 months, they'll probably come back to us with a preliminary report and say, we need a certain amount of dollars to go forward, to do some type of engineering studies, to make sure, because, my feeling is if it's the best thing for the school system, then so be it. But let's look into it, see what, if you talk to a lot of people, even some of the custodians, it was an old building in 2004. So now we're looking at, 10 years, 12 years down the road. So, but let's see, what the building is like, the insides, the guts, what can be done. Because sometimes, people have all kinds of opinions. They say, wow, it'd be nice to have school use and maybe an elderly program. Well, I don't know if it's conducive to have school children with elderly people running around and all that stuff.
Who's running, the elderly or the kids?
Wow, yeah. So
Fast
everybody
walkers.
has an opinion on this, but I think the most important aspect is to preserve that building, to use it in the best way possible, and just to make sure so that building isn't boarded up in 2 years, because I think that would be a nightmare, and then no one benefits by it.
And,
So-
Mr. Chairman, it could be as early as 1.5 years, being mindful of the fact how construction projects can go. To your point, 1.5 years, 2 years can go by pretty quick. And my only recommendation is that, maybe this committee try to time-bound this so that, you get what's expected in terms of, and I was going to suggest February we come back with a report. Now, if we ask for more time and this board is so inclined to provide more time, okay, great. But I think this committee ought to look to wrap up by February. I don't think there's reason to go beyond that, and if there is, we should come back and
Sure.
explain them.
Well, I would ask the town administrator within a couple of months to have a report back to us, Rick.
Yeah, and I was gonna suggest that, maybe you reach out to those members and let them know. I don't think there's any reason to kick off this meeting before September. We look to let the summer go through, let them have their summer, and then start it right away in September.
So, let's, if you want to add two people, let's say Mike Walsh and Steve Treadle to the committee,
Okay.
okay?
I would prefer to make a motion to go with the committee as constituted with the addition of two town meeting appointees. If you want to go forward, fine, but, I mean, I think, the town meeting representation, I think, would be important, but I'll defer to the
So-
board.
So as constituted on this sheet of paper with the addition of two town meeting members?
Correct.
And the only thing I'm gonna say is if we lay down a challenge for Citizens for Milford and they're responding, that I would hope that we could put Mr. Treadle on if he's asking to be put on, and so as one of those. So my suggestion would be two town meeting members is fine, and that we ask one of those to be Steve Treadle, if you're so inclined.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, so
So
motion,
there's no change other than two town
two
meeting
people,
members?
right.
Okay.
so,
One of whom would be Mr. Treadle.
right.
Yes.
Yes.
So, okay, so it's been increased to 13 members, and like I said, I just think, let's get started. This board is very genuine as far as doing what's best for that building, whether it be, like I said, school, some aspect of school, combination. So there's a lot of things that can be done. The main thing is that we get started. At some point, we have some budget that we can attach to doing the due diligence. And then, at the end of the day, I'm sure the right recommendation, the right alternative will come out. And there'll be a lot of discussion, too. I'm sure they'll have forums where they can bring in the public, the residents
Sure.
want to speak and all that stuff. So we've done this many times, and I just think that, like I said, I just don't want that building to be boarded up like Stacy was. I mean, that would be terrible if
Yeah,
that occurred. So,
agreed.
all right, so we'll move forward. Rick?
Yeah, so, Mr. Chairman, the second town meeting member, then, we would ask for people
Yes.
to apply, so to
Yes.
speak?
Yes.
Say within 2 to 3 weeks or
Yes,
some
sure,
timeframe?
yes,
And then the
yes.
board will make an appointment,
In
say,
August.
maybe
In
in
July,
August,
late
or
July,
late
August,
July
yes.
or early August?
Yes.
Just for clarification?
Yeah, late July,
Okay.
okay? All right, anything else?
Yeah, no, I think that'd be great.
Okay,
Take the
doctor?
opportunity to speak and to serve on the committee.
Okay, you can bring that back, doctor, next
Sort of like we
meeting.
did 10 years ago on another committee.
That's right. Yeah. Good. Thank
Okay,
you very much.
thank you,
Thank you, Doctor.
thank you.
very much.
Okay. Just one thing that I had, I think about a month ago, I brought up about looking at the comprehensive plan that was done in 2003, and I talked to Larry, a few days ago on the concept of relooking at the comprehensive plan, and he reminded me how it was done. I mean, last time, when the committee came together in 2003, 2002, nothing had been done since the 60s. So he felt that it was, very good that myself and the board felt that, we should relook at this. So I've asked them to put together a memorandum of the aspects, the most important things going forward, some of the recommendations. As we all know, the comprehensive plan looks at everything, housing, community profile, natural resource, water, economic development, schools, zoning, land acquisition, vision for the future, goals and policies, future growth and development, and what's in the best interest of the community. So I think one thing he said, and I felt very good about it, he says the board during the past 10 years has really worked diligently to adopt a lot of the recommendations and the things that were important by a lot of good people. It costs money, so he'll give us that in the breakdown. last time we received a grant, we also used a couple of town accounts that were in existence for a long time. I think it was the shoe account and all that. And the University of Massachusetts in Amherst was the lead agency and educational facility that helped us. It's very exhaustive. We have community sessions, surveys, whatnot, and then it's put together by members of the planning board and all the other town officials, and there's a subcommittee and whatnot. So he thought it was very appropriate to move forward in delineating what has to be done to update this, because it's been about 11 years now, and by the time it's adopted, it'll probably be another couple of years. So Larry will be coming in the next meeting, June 30th, with the town engineer, giving a summary of what's going on with all the projects that we have. And he'll also present the board with a memorandum going forward, and then we can talk about it and discuss it and, do what has to be done.
Makes sense.
Okay? Okay, okay, on the old business, Brian, anything on the old business?
No.
Bill?
I don't know whether it's old business or new business, but I'll bring it up under old business. Back a few years ago, there was a letter sent to the Milford Water Company regarding certain ongoing maintenance and different things. And I bring it up under the context of fire hydrants. And specifically, they had a letter from the DEP that talked about gate valve and maintenance of that. And I know Fire Chief John Toohey at the time went back and forth with the water company on how they were going to get that done. That's supposed to be done on an annual basis. So the request is really two things. Under the context of the fire hydrants and the various things that the Milford Water Company is responsible for checking, flushing, I want to, similar to the double poles, I'd like to get a inventory of the water company progress on maintaining those fire hydrants and gate valves. The other thing is, now that I'm asking the question about fire hydrants, what I'd like to do is reach out back to the DEP and see where the Milford Water Company is relative to complying with the letter they received and the corrective actions that they were responsible for following up on. And I don't know if we're gonna need to involve the fire department and get a list from them as it relates to fire hydrants to make sure our inventories coincide, right? And sometimes somebody can say they have 6 fire hydrants that need repair and are bagged, and then we come to find out there's either more or less. So maybe we should figure out how that works and how the fire department keeps up with the Milford Water Company. But I also like to reach out to the DEP to get follow-up, because
Okay.
we've never heard if that letter of noncompliance was ever closed.
Okay. Okay, if nothing else on the old business, we'll go to new business, annual reappointments, and before, the administrator has a couple of letters for us. Rick?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before the annual appointments, I did receive, was contacted by former State Representative Marie J. Parenti today, and she has asked that we withdraw her request for appointment to the Milford Council on Aging. She indicated to me she realized this is a difficult task for you to make such an appointment. She appreciates the board's efforts, and she thanks you for any consideration you may have given to her offer to serve the Milford seniors. So she has withdrawn her request for appointment. I also received a letter, excuse me, from Edwin J. Roth, the chairman from the Milford Council on Aging, and he informed me that on June 10th of this year at their regular meeting, the Milford Council on Aging voted unanimously to recommend Charles Scaff be appointed to fill the vacant council position previously occupied by the late Stanley Neloico. Mr. Scaff is well-known in town and has unique skills that will make him an asset to the Council on Aging. Respectfully, Edwin J. Roth, Chairman, Milford Council on Aging. So I received those two pieces
Okay.
of
Mr. Chairman, I'd move
Thank you.
to support that if you're looking for a motion.
Yeah, okay. Okay, what I'd like to do is do the appointments first, and then do the reappointments first, and then do the appointments, okay? So Brian, want to take the first set, please?
Okay, so I would move to reappoint the following individuals to the named position: Rochelle Thompson, Animal Control Officer, Keith Haynes, Assistant Animal Control Officer, Leonard C. Olivieri, Fair Housing Director, William J. Tui, Emergency Management Director, George Cleveland, Deputy Director.
Motion,
Second.
second? Okay, that's unanimous. Brian, want to go on a few more?
Continuing, I would move to reappoint the following named individuals to the committee so stated. Capital Improvement, Michael Swarz. Commission on Disability, Margaret Myatt, Francis O'Neill. Conservation Commission, Noel G. Bontempo, Michael A. Giampetro, Derek F. Atherton. Council on Aging, Josephine Maglioka, Marcia Andriano. The Fair Housing Committee, Leonard Olivieri, Alfred Sannicandro, Maria Valencia.
Okay. Motion by Brian, second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Go ahead, Brian, want to take, Bill, take the next
Sure,
few. okay?
Milford Finance Committee, make a recommendation, motion to reappoint David Morganelli Esquire, Philip Chair McCauley, Joyce Levine, and Mark Shane. At the Milford Geriatric Authority of Milford, Francis X. Small Esquire, Richard A. Villani Esquire. At the Historical Commission, Ronald Marino, Pamela Fields. The Industrial Development Commission, Scott Kaplan, Antonio Pinto. And I know I'm going to mess this up.
Bozanovsky.
Bozanovsky, Joseph Bozanovsky. The Milford Cultural Council, Susan Chakey, Jean Marie Simmons, Leah Valenti. From the Personnel Board, James Legore. From the Register of Voters, Rosemary Belawaka.
Thank you. Bozanovsky sounds like
butchered
a linebacker out of Penn State.
It does.
Pennsylvania country. A motion by Bill, seconded by Brian. Brian, second?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Any discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. And I'll take this one. Renewable Energy Committee, Catherine Mastriani, Dr. Nicholas Guido, Catherine Guido, and their term will expire on 6/30/17. Zoning Board of Appeals, David R. Consigli, and Brian Falk, Esquire, Associate Number 1. And David's will expire on 6/30/19, and Brian on 6/30/17. And the Milford Youth Commission, Francis Traficante, Stephen Manguso, Angelo Calagione, Esquire, and all their terms will expire on 6/30/17. Motion by Brian, second by
Second.
Bill, and that's unanimous. Now, on the reappointments, I'd like to, Brian, can you make the reappointment for the,
Are we talking about the new appointments now?
yeah, you want to go with the,
All right, looking at the sheet, I don't see any names for the 2 vacancies on the Commission's on Disability.
no,
But for the vacancy on Council on Aging, I move to appoint Charles Scaff.
motion by Brian, seconded by Bill. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Brian?
For the vacancy on the Finance Committee, I move to appoint Michael A. Nicholson.
Motion by Brian. Bill?
Yeah, it'd be my preference to appoint Jeff Nero, but
Okay,
that would be my preference.
all right. All in favor?
He reached out to me.
Oh, yeah. He did call me, I called him back, but,
Mike, a motion's been made for
Yeah.
Mike Nicholson. Is there a second?
Bill, no second?
No.
Okay, I'll second it.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? 2 in favor, 1 opposed. And the Milford Cultural Council, is there a recommendation?
I would
Brian?
move to appoint Margaret McIsaac.
Motion by
Second.
Brian, second by Bill. Any discussion? All in favor? And that's unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, just a matter of process.
Yeah.
I know that this is difficult when the motions come from one side, not the other, so that different people are making motions. But just a matter of process. What I think what maybe we could do moving forward is look to the people within the talent bank, and if they weren't reappointed to the committee they were looking for or checked, you know, Brian mentioned, for example, Commission on Disability, there were 2 vacancies. Maybe people have a willingness to serve not knowing there's vacancies, and we can reach out to those people within the talent bank and see if they have a particular interest or skill that might apply to them.
I think we do that though, Rick, right?
We do let them check off a number of different boxes, but they may not know, as Bill is saying, that there is a vacancy here.
Yeah, maybe there's a way to reach back to them, because they may not have checked off Commission on
sure.
Disability, and maybe they'd like to talk about what's needed there.
Sure.
Can you come up with something on that?
Sure, I'm sure I can, yeah.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay?
Okay, town engineer waiver of permit fees. Town engineer Bonnie Reese for the library. Is there a motion?
I'll move.
Second?
Motion by Brian, seconded by Bill. Any discussion? And that's unanimous. This is a Macajano Club asking for a all alcoholic beverages July 3rd for the fireworks.
I'll move.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Bill. That's unanimous. Let me see. Anything else on the new business? Brian?
I don't have anything, no.
Bill?
No.
Okay, and the correspondence, we have a resignation from Daniel Asante, motion with regret.
I'll move.
Second?
Motion by Brian, seconded by Bill, that's unanimous. We had the town treasurer report on the town accounts. As far as correspondence, let me see. I asked the building commissioner to give us what the process was as far as temporary certificate of occupancy. And he talked about what happens, the process, what happens when the time is up, type of inspection, what has to be done, and a lot of times it's up to the jurisdiction of the building commissioner, but he does make sure that everything is in order, that the work is done, proceeding satisfactorily, and he talked about that. And one of the things he says, most important though, each situation is evaluated on an individual basis. In all situations, all life safety components must be completed and in working order, including sprinklers, fire alarm, emergency lighting, egress components, etc. He'll be coming in at a future meeting, so we can certainly ask him about this. And he'll also be talking about the task force that began about 2 months ago, going around and doing some of the things that they continued to do during the past 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I thought you
Yeah.
said months ago.
Infinity, writing to inform you that effective August 1st, due to increased operational costs, the field collection charge for the collection of past due balances or unreturned equipment will increase from $20 to $25 per occurrence. And that's from Frank Foss. Then we also had and this is good, a lot of times we get involved with hearings and we have to take some tough action, and the board has been very diligent with the liquor establishments and all that, and the package stores. But then when something like this happens, it's very, it's a nice light on things, and this is the alcohol compliance checks that were done on May 31st by Tony Carnero and Detective Carlos Souza. They checked 23 businesses, and everything was in compliance. There was nothing, when someone went in and produced asked for a beer or whatever the case may be, they had to present licenses, and if the licenses weren't appropriate, they were asked for further information. So there were 23 establishments. I'd like to name those because I think it's important. Acapulco's, Alamo, Applebee's, Bugaboo Creek, Cafe Sorrento, Central Street Tavern, Jean's Variety, Imperial Buffet, DoubleTree Hotel, Maria's Restaurant, Milford Mandarin, Milford Marriott, 99 Restaurant, Pepperoncinis, Pins, Prezzo's, Royal Buddha, Scioli's, and TD's Pubs, and TGI Fridays. So,
There's 3 more in the back,
3 more?
next page.
Yep, Tradesman, Trattoria, 89, and Turtle Tavern. So, like I said, the board takes this very seriously, and I think they understand now that, this is serious, that they have to abide by the rules and regulations and the rules adopted by the town on liquor establishments, and it's working, so there's a perfect example. So, Rick, could we notify those 23 licenses that, we appreciate the good work, working with the police department and all that? I don't have anything else for correspondence. Brian?
Nothing
No.
further, Mr. Chairman?
No, I'm glad you brought up the compliance checks, because if somebody were found not to be compliant, that would be, topping the news. Hopefully the news will get out. The reporters are here. Otherwise, we should send them to, maybe force them to cover the Asian longhorn beetle meeting.
Yeah. That's right. Okay, that concludes the open part of the meeting. We do have 3 items for executive session. Town accountant's contract, town council Milford Water Company, and town council collective bargaining with the highway department. Is there a motion?
move.
Motion by Brian, second, Bill? Is that the
I'll second.
Second it. Roll call vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, aye. Unanimous, and the board will not be coming back into open session. Good night.